Hello and welcome to my Moon Knight reviews. So I'm going to do a review for every single episode of Moon Knight. This is the first Marvel series that I'm actually watching. Actually, this is the first Disney Plus series that I'm actually watching. And that's just because I have not been interested in anything else that Disney has put out. But Moon Knight actually interested me. I guess that they're going with his more modern day take, because before, Mark Spector was a completely different character. He basically has three different characters. There's the Mark Spector, which is like the fighter and stuff. Then there was the alter ego Stephen Grant, which was like a billionaire business dude. He's basically like the Bruce Wayne character. And then there was Jake Lockley, who was the taxi cab driver. These were just different alter egos. They weren't like different personalities or anything like that. But then eventually Moon Knight got changed so that those three different alter egos actually became three different personalities, because he developed dissociative identity disorder, or aka multiple personality disorder, as some people might know it. So those alter egos actually became different personality identities that he had, and that's what this was going. And from the trailers, it looked like it was kind of like a mix of superhero with like Memento and Fight Club. And I like the whole idea of this character waking up in different places, having no idea what the hell's going on and stuff, and trying to figure it out. So I was like, okay, this looks pretty cool. I want to give it a watch, especially since Oscar Isaac is a pretty good actor. So I've watched episode 1. At the time of this recording, episode 2 is already out, but I haven't watched that yet because I want to do what I did for my Turtles review for volume 1, where I want to be able to judge each episode on its own merits. So I don't want the next episode to affect the previous episode. So at this point in time, I have no idea what happens in episode 2. That way I can just judge episode 1 on its own. So episode 1, the Goldfish problem. Right off the gate, I'll just say I really liked this episode. I thought it was actually really good. So we have Oscar Isaac, and he is playing the character of Stephen Grant. And Stephen Grant, he works in the gift shop at a museum in London. And so we have Oscar Isaac doing a British accent. I've heard some people have some mixed feelings about the accent. For me, I don't really care. I'm not British myself, so I can't really judge how his accent is. But whatever. I guess they're trying to do that so that the different personalities that we end up later seeing are more easily discernible. Because the Mark Spector personality just has Oscar Isaac's regular American accent. So yeah, we have Stephen Grant. He wakes up in bed. He pulls over the covers to reveal that he has a lock around his ankle tied to a bedpost, and then he also has sand around his bed. And the reason for the sand is so that he can see if there's any footprints. And when he goes to his door, there's a piece of tape on the door to show if anyone has opened the door or not. And so we're kind of given, little snippets that something's going on with this guy, that maybe this guy is sleepwalking, or this guy is going someplace he shouldn't be. Like he's not going to bed and waking up without any incident. So he's calling his mom as he's getting ready for his day. And we see the Goldfish, who has one fin. He's basically like the Nemo character. It only has one fin. And so he feeds the goldfish, and he goes about on his day. He goes to the museum where we see him interacting with this little girl, and we find out that Stephen Grant actually has a lot of knowledge when it comes to at least the Egyptian history. He almost kind of appears like a tour guide, and then that's when he gets reprimanded by his boss, who basically tells him, like, you work at the gift shop, you're not a tour guide. Your job is to try to just sell these items to the guests. That's all. And I will say this is one problem that I've kind of had with this episode, is that everyone kind of treats Steven like absolute garbage. Like they just kind of walk all over him, and he kind of just takes it. And I get they want to show like the different personalities, or like the Mark character is supposed to be like the tough badass. We don't really see too much of Mark, only really near the end of this episode. But yeah, we get the impression he's like this, cool, under control badass. And then we have Steven, who's like the complete opposite. But I feel like they kind of push that a little bit too much. He's too much of a carpet that people just walk all over. And I kind of wish he kind of held his own a little bit. I also noticed that it's all the female characters that are walking all over him. So yeah, that has me a bit worried, just because even though I haven't seen other Disney Plus shows, I've heard about them and stuff, and I know one of the biggest problems that, I mean, not just the Disney Plus shows, but even the comic books had, was that they would constantly degrade the main character, or the male character. Male superheroes would constantly be degraded and ragged on to kind of elevate the female characters. And I'm worried that's where this is going to be going. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping it's just this character. They just want to show the difference between him, the Stephen Grant, and the Mark Spector personality, and that's it. I'm hoping that's what it is. Because, yeah, he just gets walked over by everybody, but especially by the female characters. So, yeah, we see him at work. This beautiful woman shows up to him and basically tells him that, she can't, she's looking forward to their Friday dates, and he's kind of confused. He's like, wait, we have a date on Friday? Like, are you asking me out? And she kind of laughs it off and leaves. And yeah, he again, like I said, he gets degraded by his boss some more. Afterwards, we see him eating a sandwich while talking to a guy who's one of those street performers who's kind of doing the human statue. And so we kind of basically see even more loserness from him in the fact that he has no friends. He like he's talking to like a human statue, doesn't talk back. He's kind of like on his own. The only person he talks to is his mom on the phone. But he goes home, and then we see him going about his little ceremony. He puts the bracelet on his leg. He's putting the tape on the door. He's putting the sand around the bed. And then he puts on this tape of this woman basically saying how, if you want to stay awake, here's what you do. And one of them is like, do a puzzle. So we see him basically messing around with one of those Rubik's Cubes, reading a book, which seems to be really weird advice. Read a book to help you stay awake. Because for me, it's the opposite. For me, like, I read books to help me go to sleep. Like, I've noticed that if I don't read a book before I go to bed, like, my mind's constantly racing. But if I read something before I go to bed, I'm able to go to sleep pretty easily. So, but anyways, he's doing that. And all of a sudden, he wakes up and he is in the middle of, he's like in this grass field. His jaw's all messed up. For a moment, he kind of looks like Bruce Campbell because his jaw's more protruded. And it turns out that like his jaw is like dislocated. So he kind of like pops it back in. He starts hearing voices. And I'm guessing the voices is from Khonshu. Khonshu is, I mean, this is probably spoilers, but Moon Knight is the avatar of Khonshu. So I'm assuming Khonshu's the one talking to him, but he's like, oh no, the idiot is in control now. And we see a terrible CGI version of, I'm assuming, Khonshu standing behind him. We only see like little pieces of him, and then by the time Stephen Grant turns around, it disappears. And then he sees like this giant castle, and he sees this guy like looking at him, and he waves, and the guy waves back. And then another dude comes out, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? Shoot him. And so they start shooting at him, and he rushes into this nearby village. And inside we see Arthur, who's being played by Ethan Hawke. We see him briefly earlier where we see him pouring either some kind of alcohol or water, I can't really tell, into a cup. He drinks it, he puts the glass down, and then he smashes it, and then he puts all the glass pieces inside his sandals, puts the sandals on, and starts walking. So we have like this, he already comes across pretty weird. And then later on, we see him walking through the crowd of villagers, and it seems like he's like almost like this cult leader. Like that's the appearance that we're given of him. He basically is the avatar for Amit, and Amit is she's like a judge. And so we have him standing up, and he's like, who wants to be judged? And this guy shows up, and he basically puts his staff in the guy's hand, and the staff starts moving back and forth. And at the same time, we see he has a tattoo. Arthur has a tattoo on his wrist of scales, and the scales actually start moving. And so this guy is basically being weighed, and he's being judged, and he's judged to be a good person. So an old woman then comes up. She wants to be judged, and then she gets judged, and she gets judged that she's not a good person. But she says, but I haven't done anything. Like, I've lived all my life being good and stuff. And Arthur basically says, I believe you. it's probably not something that you have done, but probably something that you will have, that you will do in the future. And then he does something. I think he takes her soul or something. He basically kills her. And so we have like this Minority Report thing where Amit, through her avatar, is judging people on things that they've done in the past, but also things that they are going to do in the future. And Steven is watching all this when one of the guards comes up and tells Arthur, like, we lost him. He might be somewhere in the village. So Arthur says some kind of phrase. I don't know what it is. I'm assuming it's in Egyptian. And everybody bows except for Steven. Like, Steven didn't bow immediately, so he's immediately singled out. And Arthur goes up to him and basically says, I want the golden scarab that you have. And Arthur pulls out the golden scarab and he's like, yeah, sure. And he tries to hand it to Arthur, but every time he does, like, his body won't let him. Like, his hand covers up the scarab and he can't, get his fingers open. And as he's saying this, he's basically hearing voices. I'm assuming from Khonshu telling him, don't give the scarab over. But Arthur's pretty much telling him, like, I would highly recommend that you give me the scarab if you don't want anything to happen to you. So Steven is constantly trying to, but his body refuses to let him. And so eventually Steven just decides, okay, I'm going to kind of hoof it. And he tries to run away when he gets surrounded and grabbed, and then someone rushes over to grab the scarab out of his hand. And as soon as he does, there's like a flash, and Steven is covered in blood, surrounded by dead bodies, and the scarab is all covered in blood as well. And he's like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? And so he rushes away. He's getting chased. He hops into a cupcake van and starts driving off, and then he's getting chased. And we have like this cool moment where every time something terrible is going to happen to Steven, like we have him being chased by the villagers, and one of them jumps into the trunk of the van and starts rushing over to Steven and trying to shoot him in the head. And then there's a flash, and then Steven is just driving, and he looks behind him and he sees a dead guy. He sees the guy that was attacking him is dead. And then there's like another flash, and he sees cars being, totaled. There's like another flash, and he sees like he's driving backwards, and now there's less cars chasing him. So basically every time he flashes, people are dying. And he's like, what the hell is going on? And eventually the car comes to a stop. The engine dies, and the final car that's chasing him pulls up in front of him, gets out, and as they're walking towards them, all of a sudden a bunch of logs roll down the hill, crush the car, and then they start coming towards him, and then he wakes up and he's in bed. So he assumes everything is a dream. He notices that the bracelet on his leg is still there, the sand is still untouched, the tape is still on the door. So he's like, okay, that was just a nightmare. What the hell? But whatever. So he goes, he starts eating cereal, and then as he's eating cereal, he looks at his goldfish and he notices that there's something wrong with the goldfish. The goldfish now has 2 fins instead of 1. So he takes the goldfish to the pet shop where he's questioning the pet shop owner. He's like, is it possible for fishes to grow fins? Like, what's going on here? Like, this fish should only have 1 fin, but now it has 2. And then that's when the pet shop owner is basically saying, like, I'm telling you the same thing that I told you yesterday. We don't like just sell disabled fish. Like, I know, like, after Nemo came out, a bunch of people wanted 1-finned fishes, but if you want a 1-finned fish, then go find some kind of disabled fish somewhere or whatever. And then that's when he notices the time, and he's like, oh no, I'm gonna be late for my date. He gets ready, he goes to the steakhouse, and he's basically waiting outside for his date. His date never shows up. It's starting to get late. He eventually pulls out his phone and calls her, and then that's when his date yells at him and basically says, I was at the steakhouse waiting for you for hours on Friday. And he's like, what are you talking about? It's Friday right now. And she's like, no, right now it's Sunday. He's like, I'm pretty sure, Friday still comes after Thursday. And she basically hangs up on him, and he asks like the waiter that's coming by, like, what's today? And the waiter tells him today's Sunday. And then that's when he realizes, oh my God, like, I've lost days of my life, and I have no idea what the hell happened to him. So that's when he decides to head back home, dejected, heartbroken. And he's basically eating all the chocolates that he brought on his date, because I guess he doesn't want them to go to waste. And as he's doing that, he drops some of them. And he goes down to pick up the chocolates, and he notices scratch marks on the floor. And then he realizes that the table nearby are what caused the scratch marks. But he's wondering why are there scratch marks on this floor. So he moves the table across the scratch marks, and then he looks up and he notices that there's this board in the wall that's kind of loose. So he climbs on top of the table, opens up the board, reaches inside, pulls out a cell phone and a key. And he has no idea what either of these things belong to. But he opens up the phone and he sees a bunch of mixed messages. And he realizes all of them are from Layla, except for one from Duchamp. I'm assuming Duchamp is going to be Jean-Paul Duchamp. He was in the Moon Knights comics. I'm not too familiar with these characters, but I know a little bit about them. But anyways, he's debating on whether to call Layla or not when she calls him. And he answers, and she's like worried. She's like, why haven't you called me? Like, I thought you were dead. And then he's like, who is this? And she's like, Mark, why are you talking so weird? And what's with that phony accent? And he's like, why did you call me Mark? And then she hangs up on him. And that's when we get some more weirdness. We hear like some weird sounds, and they're coming from his bathroom. So he slowly walks over to the bathroom. He pulls open like the little separator from his room to the bathroom, and he just sees a mirror, and there's nothing there. And then the lights start flickering out, and he sees the silhouette of himself in the mirror shaking its head, even though he's not moving. So then he turns on the light, and the reflection is normal. The lights start flickering on even more. He starts kind of freaking out. He rushes out of his room. He goes into the elevator where, he's hearing voices. He's pressing the button to go to the ground floor, but every time the door opens up, it opens up back on his floor, on floor 5. So no matter what he's doing, no matter how many times he tries to get to the ground floor, it won't let him. And then that's when we have this moment I really wish that they had done this a little bit differently, because I believe it's supposed to be like a scary scene, but it doesn't work because the CGI is so bad. But the elevator doors eventually open, and there's like a dark hallway in front of him, lights flickering, and then he sees this giant figure with what looks like a bone mask, and the figure starts walking towards them. And just as it's about to reach inside the elevator, there's a flash, and then it turns out to be an old woman. And just the CGI is pretty bad, and that's one of my big complaints for this. I'll get to this a little bit later on, but I don't understand why they couldn't have just had a tall person in a suit. It would save money on having to do CGI. I know it look realistic because it's a real person in a suit. Get that guy from the movie Wreck. I don't know his name, but the Spanish horror movie Wreck. Tall guy, super skinny. Like, just put the costume on him. There you go. But so eventually he deals with the lady in the elevator, and then there's like another flash, and he wakes up screaming inside a bus. And as he's riding on the bus, he looks out the window and he sees the figure from the elevator, and he gets off the bus. And as the bus is going away, he sees Arthur in the bus staring at him, and he's like, oh my god, that guy is real. So he rushes inside the museum, tries to tell the security guard there, like, hey, there's someone following me, please don't let him in. His boss yells at him some more, and he basically ignores her, goes into the Egyptian center, and then that's when Arthur shows up. And Arthur basically starts questioning him on if he knows Amit. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I know a little bit about her, but I don't know her personally or anything like that. And I thought that was kind of like a little funny line. But we basically get a little bit of Arthur's character. Arthur is, like I said, the avatar of Amit. Arthur believes that if she was in control, then a lot of terribleness wouldn't have happened. Because she judges people, but she got to a point where she couldn't wait to punish evildoers before they committed evil. Like, before, she would judge people on what they've done, but then eventually it got to a point where she was starting to judge people for what they were going to do. Again, Minority Report, basically. And because of that, all the other Egyptian gods and stuff conspired against her. And Arthur, he says, like, can you imagine what would have happened if they hadn't have done that? If she was in control, she would have stopped Hitler before, he rose to power. He would have stopped the Armenian genocide. I was like, hopefully the Young Turks don't watch this show. But yeah, he would have stopped Iraq. He would have stopped she would have stopped basically every terrible thing from happening, because she would have judged all the bad people and gotten rid of them before they did anything terrible, like before they were able to commit their crimes. So we would have this like perfect world. And Arthur basically he basically asks, like, if you know about Avatar, and Steven kind of jokes, are you talking about the blue people or the anime? And he basically says, like, like, I'm the Avatar for Amit. I can't remember if he says if Steven's the Avatar for Khonshu, but either way, Steven is the Avatar for Khonshu. And then he decides to judge Steven, and he does the thing where, he holds his hand, he puts the key in between, judges him, and basically tells Steven that there's a lot of chaos in you. And then before anything can happen, a group of people like show up on a tour, and Steven uses that to escape. So yeah, we have that confrontation. And during that confrontation, we have like another security guard show up. We have some like tourists in the area, and they all show that they have the same symbol, the same scale tattoo that Arthur has. So basically, Arthur's reach of people is very far and vast. So this is the problem that I had with this episode, other than the terrible CGI, is that they were basically trying to kill Steven here, or at least they were insinuating that they were going to get him. And then he only gets saved because a group of people on the tour show up, and he uses that to run out. And then later that night, he goes back to work. And I'm just like, why? Why would you go back to work when you were confronted by this guy who tried to kill you earlier? And that some of the people who work here, some security guards, are part of his group. Why would you go back? Why wouldn't you run somewhere else? Why wouldn't you hide? So this didn't make any sense. It makes sense just in the sense that he goes back to work so that we can move on with the plots. But realistically, it makes Steven out to be a complete idiot. If this guy threatened to kill you earlier, and you had that whole chase in the village, and the car chase and all that stuff, and then you were scared earlier of seeing Arthur to the point where you were telling the security guard to watch out for him and make sure he doesn't come in, and then you had the confrontation inside where he told you you had a chaos in you, and the only way you were able to escape was because you got lucky enough that a tour was going through just before they can do anything to you. Why would you then go back to the scene of the crime? Like, why would you go back to where they threaten you? Like, this whole thing is stupid. But he goes back, and it's like late at night. He's filling out inventory. He's about to leave when he hears like a sound of like a dog barking or whatever. And he decides to go investigate. So he goes into the Egyptian area where he's checking out where the noise is coming from. And we do get this cool moment where as he's walking, we see like his reflection on the display cases. And his reflection doesn't match him. The reflection is actually staring and watching Steven. So I like that. I like the fact that like we get like hints of the Mark personality through like his reflection acting differently. But eventually this jackal creature shows up. I don't know if it's supposed to be like Anubis or whatever, but it's like this terrible CGI monster shows up, and we hear Arthur over the PA basically say, give me the scarab, otherwise this thing is gonna kill you, in a sense. And so Steve runs, the thing chases him, and eventually he runs the back rooms, and he gets into the bathroom, locks the door. The creature's banging on the door, and he's like, oh no, I'm gonna die. And then that's when he hears Mark talking to him, and he looks and he sees Mark in the reflection, and Mark's telling him like, you got to give me control. You got to stop fighting me. Let me have control of our body, and I can save us. And then we have this back and forth of Steven obviously freaking out, thinking he's going to die, wondering if this is all in his head. And then Mark trying to tell him, like, hey, look at me. Give me control, and I can take care of this. And I like this scene a lot. I like the way it was shot. I like how he basically it's Mark in the reflection, moving on his own, talking to him, and Steven's just kind of there. I like how that whole thing is shot. That it was really cool. But eventually, Steven's like, okay, I give you control. Like whatever you got to do to keep us alive, do it. Just as the doors break down and then the jackal creature rushes at Steven, we see like these bandages start to wrap around him. And then we cut to outside the hallway where we hear like a scuffling. We see the jackal like trying to get out of the room, but then getting pulled back into the room. And we see Moon Knight in his garb beating the crap out of this jackal. And I will say that the scene was a little bit weird because it feels like they CGI'd Moon Knight as well. At least until he gets close. Like when he's leaning over the jackal and he's punching it, the cape looks CGI'd. I don't know if that was the case. If they didn't CGI it, then they did something in post-production to make it just look weird. But yeah, he's transformed into his Moon Knight figure. He kills the jackal and then he walks towards the camera, and that's how it ends. So yeah, I will say that I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was really good. I liked the teleporting, of Steven waking up in different places, not knowing what the hell is going on. I've always liked that kind of little trope, like Memento. Reminds me a lot of Memento, and I love that. I love that movie so much. So I like that bit. Like I like he's like waking up and things aren't making sense. I like when he's like flashing and there's dead bodies around him and stuff. It's kind of cool. I will say, like I said, that the CGI is not good, which is weird because this is Marvel Studios. This is Disney. How the hell can you not fork out for some good CGI? And the funny thing is that, like, for a lot of the stuff, you didn't even need to use CGI. Like, for the parts where you see, I'm assuming it's Khonshu. It's, like, the bone skull figure. When you see that figure, just have a dude dressed up. You can get a tall, thin dude to wear that costume. Do that. It would look so much better. Because, like, our technology has grown greatly, but CGI is still CGI, and it's still pretty easy to point out when CGI is going on, especially when you have full characters, as CGI. So yeah, the CGI creatures it doesn't work. I would try to use CGI as minimalistic as I can. Try to use practical effects when you can. Use, again, like people in costumes. It's so much easier and so much better looking. So I will say that I don't care for the CGI. In terms of Oscar Isaac, I think he did a great job. I will say that the Steven character is okay. He's endearing, but he's a little bit too much of a wimp. He's a little bit too much of a carpet for people to walk all over. And I kind of wish he had a bit more of a backbone. And I don't like the fact that the hints seem to be that all the girls kind of just rag on him and he kind of takes it. And so now I'm worried that when the Layla character shows up, it's basically going to be her constantly kicking butt, saving the day, constantly degrading Steven for being a wimp and a loser and not being able to do anything on his own. I'm hoping that ends up not being the case, but this is Disney, and Disney has done nothing to prove itself to me lately, and all the other Disney Plus shows have kind of gone down the same routes. So I'm hoping that's not the case. And again, like, I don't care about having strong female characters. That's fine. Like, even when it comes to comic books, my favorite favorite comic book characters, like out of my top 5, 4 of them are female. So I got no problems with badass female characters. I just don't like when the badass female characters are constantly putting down the male characters, especially the main characters. If you gotta put down someone to prop up another character, you're doing it wrong. And they didn't do that in this episode, but I'm worried they're gonna be doing that when Layla eventually comes in. I'm praying that's not the case, because again, I really, really don't care for that. So we'll see if that happens. That's just a possibility. It hasn't happened yet, so I can't judge this series for something that might happen. I can only judge it for what it has actually happened. And what's actually happened has been really good. Again, the only thing I don't care for is the CGI. I think the CGI is kind of terrible at parts. And I don't like how much of a weakling Stephen Grant is. I'm assuming they did that just so they can prop up how much better like Mark is. Like, I mean, not prop up how much better, but to show the difference between Steven and Mark. That Mark is like the tough soldier who can, get them through everything, and then Steven is the opposite. But I feel like Steven is too much of the opposite. Steven is just too much of a weakling, too much of a pushover. I wish he wasn't that extreme. I wish he had some kind of backbone, but we'll see where it goes. Other than that, like I said, I love this episode, and I think this series is off to a really, really good start, and we'll see if it continues. But yeah, there you go. Episode number 1 of Moon Knight, The Goldfish Problem. I thought it was fantastic. I'd give it, I'd say an 8 out of 10. Like I said, my only complaints were very nitpick. It was the CGI, and then the Steven character being a little bit too much of a pushover. But that's very, very nitpicky. Everything else I thought was really good, and I really liked just the whole like identity disorder and how they showed that in the different flashes, and him like teleporting to different places because his other personality took over and stuff like, and the way that they were all done, and the way he communicates with his other personality at the end through the mirrors and stuff. That was all awesome. So this was a very, very good episode, and I'm hoping it continues to be a really good series. We'll see. But anyways, there you go. Episode number 1. Hope you guys enjoyed. Tell me what you think, and hope to see you next time. Take care, everybody. Later.